Jamir, you breaking in my house? Like, are you serious? You breaking in my house, Jamir?
Why would I break in your house?
Why are you at my door with gloves on and all that?
This is the story of 29-year-old Patrice Wilson, a young mother with her entire life ahead of her who worked as a nurse and dedicated her life to helping others. She shared a video that would later go viral of her ex-boyfriend Jamir trying to break into her home in 2021. Jamir, who was a violent criminal with a lengthy criminal history, would allegedly harass her for years, leaving her unwanted gifts at her door that she wouldn't accept and trying to contact her constantly. Patrice did her best to stay away from him, but sadly, one day after finishing up her overnight shift as a nurse at a hospital in Detroit, Jamir would sneak up behind her, force her into her vehicle, and later take her life. How could someone so cruelly take this mother away from her child, and why wasn't she protected? Welcome to Viral Crimes. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more stories. This story takes us to Detroit, Michigan. Patrice Wilson, a resident of Detroit, was described as an exceptional individual with a caring and laid-back personality. She was committed to serving and helping others as a nurse and putting others before herself. She was a hard worker and was determined to make something meaningful out of her life. Loved ones described her as reserved and not involved in the streets. Instead, Patrice found solace in books and maintained a quiet demeanor, often keeping to herself. Patrice dated a 36-year-old man by the name of Jamir Miller. Things didn't work out between the two, and Patrice decided to end the relationship. Jamir didn't take the breakup well and continued to harass Patrice afterwards. One day he came to Patrice's home with a mask, gloves, and hoodie on to try to hide his identity and tried to gain entry into her home. The incident was recorded on Ring doorbell, and Patrice shared the video online, and the video went viral, gaining millions of views. Many laughed at the incident and thought it was funny, and some believed it was even a prank, but some were concerned for Patrice's safety and advised her to get a firearm. Nobody could predict the tragic events that would occur 2 years later. Around 7:40 a.m. in the early hours of May 13, 2023, Patrice Wilson was abducted while she was leaving work after finishing her overnight shift as a nurse at the Detroit Receiving Hospital in the 4200 block of St. Antoine. CCTV footage showed an individual in a blonde wig approach her as she was getting into the driver's side of her black 2020 Lincoln Nautilus SUV and force her to move a seat over before driving off with her inside. Patrice's family and friends were devastated to learn about her abduction. Patrice's mother, who also worked at the same hospital as her daughter, hoped her daughter would be found in time to celebrate Mother's Day with her and her young son, and that she would be able to convince the kidnapper to let her go. But sadly, the next day, on Sunday, May 14th, Patrice's mother would experience every mother's worst nightmare. Patrice's body was found inside the back of her car with multiple gunshot wounds at an apartment complex in Novi, about 30 miles northwest of Detroit. She had been murdered. Patrice Wilson's kidnapping and murder made headline news, with many wondering who would kidnap a nurse right from a hospital parking lot, then take her life. Her abduction put fear in her coworkers and others in the area because the suspect was still at large and the motive behind the attack was unknown. Was this a random attack or someone that Patrice knew? Patrice's abduction triggered a comprehensive investigation by the police, in which they learned about an ex-boyfriend of Patrice who had been harassing her and wouldn't leave her alone. Investigators were immediately suspicious of Jamir, and as a result, a manhunt was launched to apprehend him.
Right now, a manhunt is underway for this man, a 36-year-old accused of kidnapping a local mother and nurse whose body police discovered last night.
The victim is 29-year-old Patrice Wilson. All night, we were working on getting you new information on the case, and the investigators have just released that now.
Let's get right over to our Megan Woods with the latest on Patrice's story and what investigators are doing to capture the man they say took her life. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning, Priya, Rod. So it is confirmed that Patrice was found dead in the trunk of an SUV. It appears that she was shot, and police are still searching for the suspect, Jamir Miller. If you've seen him, you're asked to reach out to police. So here's what we know leading up to her kidnapping. Take a look. Police say Patrice Wilson, a 29-year-old nurse, was abducted around 7:40 Saturday morning. She had just gotten into her car in a parking lot near Detroit Receiving Hospital when a man jumped in.
And he approached our victim as she was getting into her driver's side of her vehicle. He then got inside of the vehicle, forced her over, and fled with her inside.
This is a photo of the black 2020 Lincoln Nautilus the two took off in. The suspect, 36-year-old Jamir Miller, is considered armed and dangerous, although police wouldn't go into detail about whether he was armed at the time of the kidnapping. Police do believe the two know one another.
We're thinking it may be domestic related.
Authorities reached out to the public for their assistance in capturing him, and they put his face all over the news. Detroit Police Chief described Jamir as a violent criminal with a long criminal history for gun and drug charges, plus assault, drunk driving, and eluding police crimes. He also has a history of domestic violence. After feeling the pressure of the investigation, Jamir decided to turn himself in with his lawyer and was subsequently arrested.
We begin tonight with an arrest in the kidnapping and murder of a nurse who was just walking to her car at the end of her shift. Patrice Wilson had just worked the night shift Friday into Saturday at Detroit Receiving Hospital.
Wilson's body was found Sunday in the trunk of an SUV outside her apartment complex in Novi. And now the man accused of abducting her and killing her is under arrest. Sean Lay got an update from the chief here just in the past hour. Sean.
Devin, we're learning that Jamir Miller turned himself in actually yesterday afternoon around 2 o'clock. Only now is DPD confirming that arrest as the investigation continues. Wilson was leaving Detroit Receiving Hospital after her overnight shift early Saturday morning when police believe Miller abducted her in the hospital parking lot. Wilson's kidnapper was wearing a blonde wig as a disguise. Police found Wilson's vehicle at her apartment complex in Novi. Her body was discovered in the trunk.
After several search warrants were executed, the suspect, feeling the pressure of this investigation due to all of the search warrants, all of the activities by those agencies that I just identified, the suspect negotiated his surrender via his lawyer.
Heartbroken family members of Patrice Wilson say she and Miller at one time did have a relationship, but say Wilson was trying to get away from Miller. Viral video from a few years back, Wilson's family says is Miller allegedly trying to get in to Wilson's home.
They were in a previous dating relationship, and it is my understanding they had recently broken up. Domestic violence continues to be a problem in our community. We have resources. We have domestic violence victim assistance units in our agency, and they can be reached at 313-883-1660.
Jamir is facing 14 weapons and drug charges in a previous incident unrelated to Patrice's kidnap and murder, and a $1 million bond has been set. Prosecutors have not yet come up with the charges against him in Patrice's case. Patrice's death was especially devastating to her mother, as she previously lost her 15-year-old son in 2003 due to a hit-and-run crash. The close-knit community of nurses in Detroit was especially affected by Patrice's murder. Many who worked with her saw her as a kind and caring person and were saddened to hear what happened to her. The hospital where Patrice worked at, the DMC Detroit Receiving Hospital, has since issued a statement after hearing about the fatal kidnapping. It is with deep sadness that we offer heartfelt condolences to the family, friends and DMC colleagues of cherished nurse leader Patrice Wilson, as well as Patrice's mother, another dedicated DMC team member. Patrice was not just a co-worker, but a loving friend to many at the DMC. The statement read. When the news of Jamir Miller's involvement in the abduction and murder hit the news, it brought up suspicion about his involvement in the disappearance of another woman who went missing over a decade ago. Bianca Green, who was a 24-year-old pregnant nursing student living 30 minutes outside Detroit, in Romulus, Michigan, has not been seen alive since March 25, 2011. Bianca dated Jamir and was the mother of his child. According to her family, she spent a year trying to get away from Jamir and his abuse. They reported that she moved and hid from him for a year because she was terrified of him. After Bianca's family saw Jamir on the news, suspected of the murder and abduction of Patrice, it reignited painful emotions that they had years ago.
Jamir Miller Sr. is linked to a missing nursing student, 24-year-old Bianca Green, who went missing in 2011, last seen in Inkster. She was pregnant. Miller and Bianca had dated and have a child together, Jamir Jr. Here is Miller at a Crime Stoppers press conference back then, holding their son.
It's hard being a a single father, and it's hard for me to even tell him what's going on.
We ain't never give up hope, but we was trying to give Jamir the benefit of the doubt.
But now, after 12 years, this family is questioning everything after learning Miller was arrested in connection to Patrice's death. In Bianca's case, family always suspected foul play. You know she wouldn't have left Jamir Jr.
She wouldn't have never left Jamir. That was her, like her Velcro. She wouldn't have never left her son.
Miller has an extensive criminal history for gun and drug charges, assault, drunk driving, and running from police. He was questioned but never charged in Bianca's disappearance. Romulus police, who led that case, did not respond to our calls to see if the case will now be re-examined.
What do you hope comes out of this now that Jamir's in custody?
That we get some type of closure.
An investigation into Jamir's past also uncovered a police report made by a third ex-girlfriend of his, claiming that he slashed her tires. His past showed a history of violence against women. The investigation into Patrice Wilson's kidnapping and murder is ongoing, and detectives are finalizing their report to turn over to the Wayne County prosecutor to review and decide what charges to file against Jamir. Patrice Wilson did the right thing by ending a relationship, but sadly, the tragic outcome was due to Jamir's violent behavior and his determination to hold on to her. Regrettably, these kinds of perpetrators refuse to accept rejection. What happened to Patrice should have never happened. She should have been allowed to move on with her life. Her life should not have been taken because she no longer desired to be in a relationship with Jamir. He should have moved on with his life, but instead, a young beautiful life was senselessly cut short and a young boy is without his mother. My condolences to Patrice's friends and family. May you continue to heal and one day find peace. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.